Happy Sabbath. Tonight we're going to study chapter 21 of Revelation. Chapter 21 and 22, both are happy chapters. Let's start with verse 1. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth passed away, and the sea is no longer there. The verse said there will be a new heaven, a new earth. The first heaven and first earth passed away. New meaning there's an old, and first meaning there's a second or last. But the emphasis is on the state of things, meaning situations, circumstances, and not about the sequence of things. So it is actually trying to contrast the wholeness, which is in the new earth, and the brokenness, which is the old earth. The new earth does not mean that the old earth has been discarded or thrown away, but it is still the same earth, but is new in nature. According to the scholar, new suggests fresh life rising from the decay and wreck of the old earth. Like God's people are still themselves, but without brokenness. And it is still the same earth, but is renewed. And the verse said the sea is no more. It is not primarily about the physical feature of the earth, but is describing the theological state of the earth. The sea often exists in relation to evil power, such as the beast or dragon in chapter 13 of Revelation. And if you remember also in Daniel chapter 7, there were 4 beasts came out of the sea. And also in the book of Isaiah, the prophet also associate the wicked power with the tossing sea, which cannot rest, whose water toss up mire and dirt. This is in Isaiah 57, verse 20. So therefore, no more sea means the evil powers are vanished. And this is the natural result of the total defeat of the satanic trinity, as we talked about in chapter 16, chapter 17, and chapter 19. No more sea indicates the cosmic conflict is over, and the earth is liberated from the forces that cause turmoil. Look at this. The new world is characterized by the sea was no more, death will be no more, grief will be no more, crying will be no more, pain will be no more, all things accursed will be no more, night will be no more. Just like what Isaiah said in chapter 65, verse 17. For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered or come to mind. The earth was doomed, is now renewed. It was broken and is now healed. Verse 2. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride, adorned for her husband. Last chapter, chapter 20, just hinted that the holy city had already come down, because it says Satan and his vast army was surrounding it and ready for the last battle against God and his people. Now it is bringing you a new perspective about what is new, contrasting to what has been old. Let me bring you back to what is old according to the Bible. Do you remember Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel chapter 2? The king dreamed of a statue, and Daniel explained to him that each part represented a kingdom. and the head of the statue was gold represented. Babylon denotes its superior in quality, in wealth, and in power. But golden Babylon was conquered by silver, represented Medo-Persia. And the silver, which is Medo-Persia, was conquered by bronze, which is Greece. And Rome, iron, defeated bronze, Greece. And then even iron cannot be sustained. The bottom of the statue is clay and iron mixture, representing 10 small kingdoms. You probably have noticed that as the empire rise and fall, they do not improve in quality and strength from gold depreciated to clay. In this dream, the successor is inferior to the kingdom before it. And we observe failure, although there is ever increasing determination to succeed. And this is the state of our world, cannot be improved. Furthermore, the old city portrays rebellion and failure. That includes the old Jerusalem, like what Isaiah said. Isaiah said, "See how the faithful city has become a prostitute. She once was full of justice. Righteousness used to dwell in her, but now murderers." Isaiah 1:21. So the old, the weak, the corrupted are no longer exist. And here the bridegroom indicates new community and new beginning. New Jerusalem. New Jerusalem denotes God will reverse past failure of the old Jerusalem. Just like what I mentioned in verse 1 about the new earth. New Jerusalem doesn't mean discarding of the old, but means it will be new in its nature, as I mentioned. No more sin, no more crying, no more tears, no more pain. This also suggests, according to Dr. Tonstad, God redeems human history just like he redeems the earth. He clarifies, history will not be discarded and annulled any more than the earth. That is the people, the human part. That means God's people are still themselves. The experience cannot be erased, but they are in the past. And now, in the renewed state, there will be no more brokenness. Creation, as depicted in Genesis, is vindicated in the new creation. And Israel, as its story is told in the Old Testament, is finally at home in a promised land and a holy city that exceed anything imagined in the past. Now let's go to verse 3. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be among them." We talked about the holy city coming down out of heaven from God. But this does not mean that human beings will resume life on earth as before, or that God will resume business as usual in heaven. God too comes down. The dwelling place of God is among human beings. We can see how much he loves us. He wants to be with us. A side note here, I'd like to mention, which I think is very meaningful. A close reading of Genesis leads to realization that this new arrangement of God himself will dwell among men is not new. It was actually suggested in Genesis, in the beginning. Let me show you a verse, and then I'll explain it. So the creation of heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. On the seventh day, God has finished his work of creation. So he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy. Holy means set apart for God, because it was the day when he rested from all his work of creation. This is Genesis 2, 1-3. Now let me explain. By resting or pausing on the seventh day and declare this day to set apart for him, God is thereby shown to have entered into the time of the created order. God entering into our time space, says Bible scholar Terence Freedom. And then another scholar, Jürgen Moltmann, he said the seventh day in Genesis means that God adopts the community of creation as his own milieu, meaning on this day God adopts his creatures community as his own social environment. Many people regard Sabbath as burdensome, human obligation to God. But another scholar called Shimon Bacon perceives the seventh-day Sabbath is a divine commitment to man. Therefore, Sabbath is God with us, and it is linking our history from the very beginning until the end of time. This perspective allows us to remember and to give us hope. Sabbath is God with us, Emmanuel and Shekinah. This unfamiliar perspective lessen our surprises that at the end God relocates from heaven to earth. We can see and understand that at the end God is making good on a commitment that has been there from the very beginning. Verse 4. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there no longer shall be death, neither sorrow, nor crying, nor pain, for the first things have passed away. Verse 5. And who sits on the throne said, Behold, I am making all things new. And he said, Write, for these words are faithful and true. 6. And then he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give to the one who thirsts from the spring of the water of life without cost. God is making all things new in the sense of renewal, applying heaven's power of healing to broken conditions. So there'll be no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying, no more pain. The first things or the previous things have passed away. The old things, brokenness, are gone. And that ushers in the second things, which is new and whole. 3 action words were emphasized here. Number 1, behold or look in verse 5. 2, write in verse 5. 3 is done in verse 6. So God tells John to look and to write, meaning to observe and to make note of what God has promised is coming true. The old is gone and new is here. Done denotes God's commitment is now completed to its fullness. I am the Alpha and the Omega. Oftentimes, we have difficulty in understanding this title of God. We interpret it simply as the Almighty. However, a scholar named David On said, this divine title denotes a significance if we relate it to the concept of the universe. Universe has many galaxies. The scientist says there are 125 billions galaxies out there in the universe. The stars that we see on a clear night only belongs to our little galaxy. So Alpha and Omega is suggesting our God is a God larger than we can ever comprehend, as the space of the universe, which is not constrained by time, contrasting to us, human, who are limited to time. And yet, this is a God that has come into our time-space in the person of Christ and relate to human in a personal manner. How privileged we are. Again, I read it again. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give to the one who thirsts from the spring of the water of life without cost. You see how God, after introducing himself as the Alpha and the Omega, he rushes to say, I will give, indicating first, God wants us to know that he is boundless, not about impressing us, but it's about what he can and wants to give us. And this is very reassuring, because in Genesis 3, the serpent portrayed God as one who withholds and prohibits. Remember what he told Eve? He said, didn't God say you cannot? But here God say what? I will give. What he is about to give is the water of life to those who are thirsty. And thirsty is the metaphor for need. We need because we are broken. The only condition to receive this gift is being thirsty, having a deep need for God. God sees and understands the human condition. Verse 7, he who overcomes will inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. 8, but for the cowardly and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and immoral persons and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, their part will be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. We are living in the sphere of the great controversy, good versus evil. One can give allegiance to one or the other. Choices may have lasting consequences. Choosing to be thirsty for God, his gift will be the spring of the water of life. By contrast, allegiance to the enemy, the serpent, his offering, the serpent's offering, is a share in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, the second death. In essence, out from God's wealth and resource is the offering of life. But in contrast, the enemy can only offer deception and death. Verse 9 and 10. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues came and spoke with me, saying, come here, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. the bride, the wife of the Lamb. In the Old Testament, the earthly Jerusalem is often spoken as a bride, lavishly adorned for God. It says in Isaiah 62:5, describing the Old Jerusalem, "Lift up your eyes and look around. All your children gather and come to you. As surely as I live, declares the Lord, you will wear them all as adornment. You will put them on like a bride." This is in Isaiah 49:18. And again in Isaiah 62:5. "As a young man marries a young woman, so will your builder marry you. As the bridegroom rejoices over his bride, so will your God rejoices over you." So the previous passages from Isaiah is applied to the Old Jerusalem. But in Revelation 19:7-8, the same metaphor is applied to God's people. Let me read. "Let us rejoice and be glad and give him glory, for the wedding of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. Fine linen, bright and clean, was given to her to wear." So therefore, the New Jerusalem and God's people are identical. Verse 10 said John was being carried away. This carrying away sounds familiar. Do you remember in chapter 17, verse 3? John was carried away by an angel to a wilderness to get the truth about the women sitting on a scarlet beast, representing Babylon. He is now again carried away, but to an enormous high mountain. This time he is being shown not Babylon, the unfaithful city, but the faithful city, New Jerusalem. Next week, we will continue from verse 11. Happy Sabbath.